You see this? This is a or an official Nintendo game from the Nintendo 64. This is obviously from Ocarina of Time, Kokiri Forest, but if I don't rotate it, I hope in GIMP 3.0, I think it is, they get rid of the rotate feature. I think it's pointless. We're on a computer, we use pixels, we don't use circles. Get that out of here. But anyways, take a look over here. That is some blurry textures. Very bad looking in my opinion. And this also very blurry, very low resolution. Like that grass, it's probably like 5 pixels. And it's just stretched out and it looks basically it kind of looks like somebody was a little bit too harsh with the blur filter. But honestly, how can you blame them? Like, oh, they were developing it early on. They didn't know the architecture, all this stuff. Honestly, though, I think that's just cope. They probably just had a skill issue. But enough of that. Because take a look at Rare. You see their textures? Like, you can look at these mountain textures, these wall textures, and like, dang, that looks good. That looks detailed. They got colors. They got whatever this goop is. Like, and my favorite texture is just this like mountain or like this curve, the spiral. My favorite part. It looks really good for a Nintendo 64 game. Honestly, some people might even say like, dang, there's no way that ran. They must have used some black magic. They probably used whatever this goop is to get this working. Probably used Sonic's ring. But no, they didn't. They were definitely within the Nintendo 64's limits. And I might even say that they might have had some extra performance they could have used. Because all of their textures were actually using the Nintendo 64's worst quality texture format. And I say worst quality with air quotes because, honest to goodness, as long as you know what you're doing, you can use any kind of texture quality. But most of them are kind of overkill. And before I get into actually how we make these textures, I just want to quickly give you an overview. There's 4 main texture formats that developers use. There's RGBA 16, which had a maximum size of 44 by 44 pixels. And I can just load up an example. So this is one of those textures. I don't think it is 44 by 44. There's 32 by 32. They could make it smaller as long as the power of 2. But you can see all this black, that's transparency. You would be able to have quite a few colors, a lot of colors, but you only had 1 bit of transparency, and that was really good for stuff like this belt buckle. Like you only basically 1 bit of transparency means it's either the pixel is fully transparent, fully see-through, or it's going to have some interesting looking color on it. And this brings me to this picture. This one's quite interesting. Like you got all these like teething. I don't know. I didn't get this far in the game, but when it's transparent, they definitely are using the same mode, which is RGBA 16. Also, it's a very interesting resolution. It's 64 by 16. Technically, like you can rearrange the pixels into odd shapes, but the point is that you have 44 by 44 total pixels to work with. And as long as they're power of 2 again, I have to stress that. You see these black things here? I'm not entirely sure if this is actually how it appears in the real game, but it's telling me that, first of all, they have a tool that automatically converts this image into this image, and that they have, like you can kind of see there, they had some partial transparency, and this brings me to the next format, which is RGBA 32. And since this is such a big texture, I'm assuming maybe they accidentally created it for an RGBA 32, but then had to change it to an RGBA 16. But the point is that RGBA 32 would let you have a variation or a range of transparency values. Basically, it gave more bits to the transparency, so you wouldn't either have all or none. You could have a combo. And you can see they probably changed that in development. This one's also RGBA 16. And I don't think I've seen any 44 by 44 pixel images here. They are all very, very square. But now, one thing, I zoom out, you can kind of tell immediately that, dang, these are high resolution. And that's because all of these are using probably my personal favorite format. It's CI4. It had a maximum resolution of 64 by 64 pixels, but it had the limit of only having 16 colors with indexing, meaning you could choose those 16 colors, but you were stuck with them. Like, let's take a look here. Like, the sand, it looks really good. And honestly, you only need 16 colors for this. This is, like, if you can, let's get a filter out. Let's blur, Gaussian blur. Get it all the way up. Basically, the point I'm trying to make is if a texture from a distance is basically just kind of like one color, then you don't need that many colors. That's the trick that Rare used. So if we undo this, they probably didn't use this exact method that I'm going to show you, but they probably used something or a methodology very similar. Like, this also is an interesting thing. They got some like color banding, but honest to goodness, this looks like almost like a watercolor painting, in my opinion. Looks really good still. But what they did was they focused more on contrast instead of colors, if that makes any sense. And to demonstrate this, I will quickly load up an image. Let's see here. Let's get a picture of... What's a good example? Just grass, I guess. Doing the quick old Google. There you go. Got some grass. Copy image. Clipboard. So we got some grass. It's not the best quality grass, but for our examples, it'll do fine. I am going to scale this image down to 64 by 64 pixels. The thing with the Nintendo 64, oh dang, that actually looks really bad. I'm going to actually crop this instead. The thing with the Nintendo 64 is that it was a lack of memory. That's why they like kind of chopped up the textures. Like, you would only be able to load one of these textures at a time. No mip mapping, none of that fancy schmancy stuff. Anyways, crop this in. And that looks really cool. That looks really good. Now let's scale this down. Scale. Oh, you know what? I want to enable linear. There we go. Oh, that's not it. There we go. Still a little noisy, but let's just pretend that's detail. This will demonstrate the point I'm trying to make. It looks really cool. Nintendo 64 wouldn't be able to render this. This is still full sRGB, high quality, a lot of colors. This is where a color palette comes in. You're gonna get a color palette. I found this on low spec. I'll link to it in the description. You just find a color you like. I like this color. And then GIMP, some other tools that have something similar. They have a colorize option. You can just go in. I forgot to copy this. Go in, paste that, hit OK, and it recolorizes the image. So basically what it does internally is it turns it grayscale and then applies like an overlay. And as you can see, very light. So maybe not the best. We can do like multiply. Like, dang, that's actually looking pretty good. We could do all these different things like dodge. That doesn't look very good. Merge. That's probably what they were using. Normal. Place. You just scroll through these. That looks very, very unique. But basically, still quite a bit of colors here. So I'm going to show you guys an example of these running on real hardware. However, for this specific texture, I'm going to showcase what it would look like when it gets posturized. That is not what it would look like. I've set it to 16. And it's so noisy that you can't even tell the difference, in my opinion. Control Z, Control Y, there's a imperceptible difference. That's because of how it was turned to grayscale and then applied like a color over it. Like, some of these textures, they thought it out better. They probably used an original one and then made room for these colors. It's still 3. Bring this up to 16. This one is a screenshot, so it looks slightly different. But the point is, like, these were really well made. And this is just like the cheap, lazy way to do it. There's so many other ways you can do this. Like, and also so many other ways you could just make textures in general. This texture probably has way too many colors, but now this is the cool example I want to show you. I have this running on real N64 hardware, and this looks really good. You can go up close without worrying about clipping through, of course, and you can see the detail on all these textures. Like they literally look like how they did in what's it called in GIMP. And also we have a beautiful skybox. This could run on real hardware. I've tested it. It runs a little bit worse on real hardware, more like 48 instead of 58 frames a second. This is using Raylib, LibDragon, and Model 64 to import this all from Blender. This is the entire scene. And actually, I kind of want to get close, so let's go up close. I'm going to minimize. So obviously this one seems to have more detail. This one smooths it out more. Basically, the point I'm making is that you want to focus more on contrast and shapes and stuff like that than you do on the colors. That's what like discourages people. And I look closer without clipping through it. You can see like these darker areas here got like more brown. But who really cares when like it still looks just as good? And now here's the other cool thing about the Nintendo 64. If we go back into Blender, you can see that there's vertex colors. Just because you use a low color image doesn't mean you have to have low colors. I applied like a yellowish tinge to this grass to like signal like, oh yeah, they were walking with sand out over here or something. And then like you could put like a blue shade around like the perimeter to signal shadow. I also put like a dark one under here to kind of like show it's underwater. I don't think it got applied. I think it is there. I'll just do it. Paint. Go into tools. Get my watercolor. Oh, I select it. And also, just quick side note: this skybox, it is not a texture. This is all vertex colors. Just another example of how you gotta kind of think outside the box here with the Nintendo 64. I'm using like a similar thing to like Spyro the Dragon. Their skyboxes were all vertex colors, if I'm correct. But anyways, get back here. Selected, vertex paint. And I don't know, just draw. You can draw in shadows. Okay, so these definitely have it because they kind of connect like that. The only issue with this is they have to kind of be like very subtle with it, or otherwise it's gonna be like, oh dang, that looks really bad. You can kind of see the borders almost. But like, this looks really good. You would take a look at that and be like, dang, that honestly, this looks like it could run on Nintendo 64. But like, dang, that looks really cool. I'm very proud of this border here. I just put some quick vertex colors. Like, hold up. I wonder if I can just like disable them. Make a new one. I'll save it beforehand because I don't want to corrupt this file. I have it very specifically set up so I can easily export this and compile it. Switch to this. Oh wait, I forgot some per material. I won't be able to. Maybe I rename it. That broke it. Point is, oh, you know what? I load the code up. This is the code for this. I'm working on a Raylib 3D demo for the Nintendo 64 right now. This is going to be the code for that. And I have it all, commented up. I want to comment that out, save it, and I'm going to rebuild it, and then I'm going to reload it. I think it still has it enabled. Yeah. This guy still. I might be a little stupid. Pretty sure there's something here that does it as well. I think it's just the way how Model 64 draws meshes. It just keeps it enabled. So I guess that's cool. I'll re-enable those. Actually, you know what? We're getting 59 without those. I might screw it. I might leave those disabled. Learning while on camera. Would have thunk. But you can clearly see like this. This is good looking. It's very good looking. And you just want to take that approach where you worry more about the contrast instead of the color. Like there are some examples where Rare did use like these shiny objects. I'm pretty sure these are RGBA 16, I want to say, or they might just be CI8 because they don't have transparency. So, but that means they are stuck at a smaller resolution, but in return they get a lot better color. And like this is like a metal example, or an example of metal. So you might want, to take the hit on that. More color makes it better looking. Not a bad idea. Like some of these textures over here, they're really small. And honestly, another thing to say, just because a texture is CI4 doesn't mean it is supposed to or can only be 64 by 64. You can have it as like a multiple of 2 or a power of 2. I think down to 8 by 8. If I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure these are 16 by 16. So these might. Yeah. Yeah. Basically, quick, simple video on how textures, how they're done. They're high resolution, focus on contrast, worry less about colors, and you can get there. I hope this video has been helpful.